The Emirates Aviation University and the UTN team understood the educational problems of our industry. And we know that universities are the space for the training and development of the next generations of aeronautical professionals. With the aim of achieving a cultural exchange, the new talent for aviation has been originally conceived by the group made up of the Research Department of the Emirates Aviation University, and the Aero Commercial and Air Transport Department of the UTN, Martin Kong, Roberto Eriksson, and Fovio Raulchar. Throughout these presentations, we have worked so that our students are the protagonists. This leading role dedicated to our students also has another objective, that our next generation in aviation has more and better resources to innovate, and with a global vision of the industry. Especially in the teams led by the Research Director of the Emirates Aviation Universities Indoga Mutava Raik and Omar Shafiq, who have made available time and resources to make the NTFA possible. So that the audience knows the fundamentals of the NTFA, we want to tell you that it has been created so that our future graduates and professionals who work in the aviation field today can work together on industry issues. Our aviation, from the Chicago Convention of 1944, is pronounced in its 19 annexes as a single activity involving all member countries. Beyond the problems of countries' resources and policies, aviation became a globalized industry long before the world began to talk about globalization. But until now, in much of the world, when companies in the aeronautical sector need to incorporate new collaborators, about 95% of the personnel interviewed do not have prior aeronautical knowledge or formal education. This situation generates a real financing problem for them, since once hired they will have to instruct them in a very short time and, in some cases, the previous one adds a collateral problem of cost and direct loss. Since after the trial period, must discard a high percentage of personnel for not having been able to adapt to the current requirements in the industry. These two institutions that today make up the new talent for aviation, understood the problem and have developed programs that value training and education, receiving formal university academic education. Thus, establishing a dialogue with your future employer using the same language. The university's aeronautical education establishes a direct link between the graduate's need for job placement with the job opportunities that the industry and the employer can provide. The NTFA kicked off with two brilliant presentations by leading professionals from Emirates Aviation University. Aviation Industrial Studies, by the engineer Mr. Hisham Abuzala, responsible for Emirates Engineering Management of Total Product Support and Suppliers. About the systemic tools that we have in our industry aircraft, Dr. Crystal Ioannou told us about aircraft safety and regulations. The National Technological University presentations will address the following topics. Fuel efficiency, with the contribution of engineer and captain and instructor A320 Roberto Eriksson and graduate student captain A320 instructor Gabriel Gaeta. The pandemic impact, by our graduate students, Maria Grazia, Julia, Augustina, Mirna, Egle, and Marco, accompanied by Professor Conk, gave us their vision of the impact of the pandemic in Latin America region, but providing a solution to possible conflicts that we may have in the future in an equal or more complex situation, with the contribution of Annex 9. And the last presentation, Personal Influences on Aviation Operations, by the graduates from UTN. Augustina will give us an introduction to what our research led us to a new look at human factors. Leonardo, Damien, Julia, Maria Grazia, and Romina will introduce us to the basic concepts of personal influences that will be treated in depth in the next editions of NFTA. These topics are addressed by UTN graduates and teachers, who have worked as a team to achieve the proposed objectives. These objectives are, the graduates investigate and the teachers accompany the investigation, so that on a day like today, we can show the aeronautical community that the search for solutions to our problems can be addressed by the university. That distances are not an obstacle to the interpretation and resolution of problems common to the industry. Aviation will continue to be a cultural link without borders. It is our wish as UTN graduates that at the next NTFA we can work together with our peers from the Emirates Aviation University on common problems.
I am Damián Macarlipú from Córdoba, Argentina, and I will be presenting on fatigue as a personal influence on aviation. To begin, we must consider that we can analyze, study, or define fatigue from the physiological point of view, from its impact on human performance, or from its causes and manifestations. What is indisputable is its relationship with safety, affecting a key link in the chain, the human factor. So, fatigue becomes important in aviation when efficiency is reduced or performance impaired. Let's review the definition of fatigue by the International Civil Aviation Organization and the Federal Aviation Administration of the US. Some key points that we can extract are: fatigue is a state, a condition of discomfort and reduced performance and impaired alertness. Involves loss of power or ability to respond to stimulation. That means decreased situational awareness. Manifests itself as a feeling of tiredness, is caused by disturbances or lack of sleep, circadian phase, and or high workload. All this obviously affects human performance and thus the safety of the operation. Beyond the difficulty involved in producing reliable statistics on fatigue and its consequences, publications highlight the following. Fatigue has been identified in several major aircraft accidents as a cause or a contributing factor. Aviation policies reflect the importance of fatigue in aviation safety. Since 1972, more than 200 safety recommendations issued by the NTSB focused on fatigue. Pilot fatigue has been on the NTSB's most wanted list of safety-related priorities since 1990. However, these policies don't seem to have resulted in a significant improvement, since 23% of the major aviation accidents between 2001 and 2012 were attributed to fatigue, compared with 21% in a 1980 study. There are factors in daily life which are associated with fatigue, like diet, exercise, and physical fitness, among others. In 2018, ICAO, together with the International Federation of Airline Pilots Associations, published Fitness to Fly, a medical guide for pilots, which they described as a preventive medicine manual focused on the health risks pilots face during their careers, also applicable to cabin crew, air traffic controllers, and anyone working within the aviation industry. The causes of pilot fatigue are related to sleep quality, sleep loss, and the disruptions of circadian rhythms. There are some important factors contributing to fatigue in the aviation industry besides the inter-individual differences. The type of operation and planning aspect. Type of operation. In long-haul operations, disturbances in circadian rhythm result from night flights and or jet lag. In short-haul operations, the problem is prolonged duty periods with a long time on task and sleep loss due to early awakening. Planning aspects, duty length, start time, number of flights, etc. Let's move now to manifestations and effects. Fatigue can manifest itself both physically and psychologically, as we can see in the table on the screen. Fatigue also affects non-technical skills like attitudes towards interpersonal conflicts and situational awareness. Physical and mental manifestations of fatigue ultimately increase the probability of making errors, particularly in difficult flights, during a high density of verbal exchanges, or under time pressure. Last but not least, research has shown that fatigue may cause long-term health effects. Although these effects may have a limited influence on the performance of a fatigue crew, they may lead to long-term reductions in performance and different diseases. So, how can we deal with fatigue? The answer is fatigue management. Fatigue management, or FM, is always a shared responsibility between states, service providers, and individuals. Fatigue management is and its measures to decrease the impact of fatigue in flight operations can be divided into two categories. Preventive strategies, procedures to ensure crew members get optimal sleep during layovers and before duty, schedule, sleep hygiene, pre-flight naps, etc. Operational countermeasures, actions that can be taken in flight to maintain alertness and performance. In-flight napping, alternate activity and rest between the flight crew members, etc. Some final thoughts about fatigue. New generation aviation professionals need to deepen our knowledge about fatigue and its impact on safety, not only for a theoretical analysis of the phenomenon, but above all, trying to design and apply preventive strategies that allow addressing the causes of fatigue, trying to reduce them, mitigating at the same time the contributing factors of the aviation activity. Apply and develop new operational countermeasures based on data and evidence to reduce the effects of fatigue on the operation. Consider not only the immediate consequences on the human performance, but also the long-term health effects, in order to take care of the human element of the system, promoting the psychophysical well-being of the aviation professionals and aviation community. Finally, take into account factors of daily life that are associated with fatigue, such as diet, exercise, and physical fitness that can be modified by adopting healthy habits. Thanks and gracias to all, and I leave you with Julia.
Good morning, good afternoon. My name is Maria Gracia Ramirez. I'm from Rosario, Argentina, and I will talk about discipline. We define discipline and illustrate its importance to safe flight operations. Its objective to reinforce the importance of discipline as the foundation of airmanship and the need to follow procedures to ensure safe operations. The briefing note demonstrates that poor discipline is the direct result of attitudes that may lead the pilot to deviate from standard operating procedures. It also describes defenses and controls for these attitudes that will enable flight crews to enhance flying through improved personal discipline. So we can say that discipline is behavior in accordance with rules of conduct, behavior and order maintained by training and control, often defined as a dual commitment to comply with rules and procedures, and the willpower and ability to operate safely. Good discipline is not accepting that rules must sometimes be bent to get the job done. Controlling the feeling that you have the ability and experience to do the job without following the standard operating procedures. Rejecting opportunities for shortcut or to do things that appear to be better. Planning and preparing for problems before they arise by thinking ahead. Human mistakes accounts for over 80% of the causes of aviation accidents. Many cite flight crew failure to follow the standards operating procedures as contributing to an aircraft accident or incident. Here we can look, pilot deviation from basic operational procedures represents the 33% of events. Inadequate cross-check by second crew member is a 26%. So we need to think about this. Attitudes and discipline. An attitude is defined as a set of beliefs of mind that has the potential to affect a pilot's performance on one or more flight tasks. And attitudes' effect on the performance of one task can be positive, negative, or neutral, neither positive nor negative. A pilot's attitudes can have a direct effect on his or her discipline and the discipline of crew members when operating an aircraft. So I consider some key on this issue. Discipline is the foundation of airmanship. Discipline must be always maintained in aviation. You must have discipline in preparation, in practice, during the activity, and also in the briefing. A critical part of it is the management of hazardous attitude that can lead to increased workload and stress. A professional good discipline and the character to rise above human weaknesses or control hazardous attitude, anti-authority, impulsiveness, invulnerability, machismo, resignation, and complacency. Apply the following defense. For anti-authority, follow the standard operating procedures. Do not break rules. Zero tolerance for violations. For impulsiveness, we will prepare for every flight. Do not rush decision circumstances. For invulnerability, remember that everyone makes mistakes. It could happen to you. For machismo, work as a team. Your conscience is your personal leader. Do not try to impress anyone. For resignation, you can always contribute to some aspect of the situation, comment, or ask a question. And for the complacency, be alert and ready to act, understand the risk of events, the most routine tasks, and do not take anything for granted. Thank you.
Hi everybody, this is Romina from the National Technological University from Argentina. We're going to talk in this opportunity about workload. So let's start by defining what we understand by workload. Because it's the demand imposed on the human factor where mental resources are used to pay attention, perceive, make decisions, and act reasonably. It is the rate of the resources required to perform a task and the number of resources available. We will have a problem when the demand of mental tasks exceeds the capabilities of human operators because the errors will show up. And it depends on the operator experience with the task, training, and relevant skills level. There is also a concept very important nowadays, which is the psychophysiological engineering, which is an approach developed in order to evaluate the human-machine interaction with a special emphasis on the mental workload of aeronautical employees. So let's take a look at the relation between task demand, performance, and effort. We have 6 dimensions, where in the D dimension we have low task demand and performance, a poor performance. And that could be because the human factor is experiencing fatigue, is distracted, or there is a lack of knowledge. Many reasons could be there. A1 is when we can observe that the task is being handled better, and that's why the effort is decreasing. A2 is the best scenario expected, is the optimal performance where the operator can easily cope with the task required. A3 is when after a while we can see that the effort is increasing, the performance is a good level, but that could be, for example, because the human factor is a bit tired. B is when the demand starts to exceed capacity. And finally, C is when the human factor is overloaded and the effort is so high and the performance is bad. So keep talking about workload. What we have in this example is at the beginning, a human factor full of energy, eager to learn, waiting for the task. And after a while, he or she will start feeling the weight of the responsibility, the number of tasks, and the time. So if the workload doesn't stop or is growing, is increasing non-stop, what will happen at the end will be human factor exhausted. We cannot forget about the underload because we are talking about the excess, but we cannot forget about underload. So if we have on the opposite side, human factor waiting for challenges or for opportunities to grow, and they are not there, what we will see is boredom, loss of situation awareness, reduced alertness. But going back to workload excess, the effect of this will be lower task performance, errors such as slips, late, and mistakes, and staff quitting. So we know how high the costs are when it comes to train people, human resources, in the aviation industry. So as we were saying, when the human resources are exhausted, a task in performance is effective. On the upper right corner, where we have a straight relation between the time and the number of tasks. So we can see that over the years, the workload is increasing, the performance is at this level, but that will be an item or there will be a time where both will drop dramatically, and that will happen because the operator gives up. And that would be due to the number of tasks will not be manageable anymore. So the stress level also comes with workload. So what we can see here is that fatigue and exhaustion could be expected effects, but also is when a stop or a break or a rest have to be done. Otherwise, we will see unhappy effects like breakdown, anxiety, burnout, etc. So how can we assess workload? We have several measures, but we can see some of them. Main task is one of those, that is when addressing the performance of a specific criterion of interest, such as performance tracking, number of errors, speed of performance, or reaction time. Then we have the secondary tasks that are additional tasks that will receive less energy from the human factor comparing to the primary task, because the last ones will have the priority. But those are good measures, the secondary tasks, in order to evaluate the reserve capacity. Right after are the reference tasks that are standardized laboratory tasks that are measured before and after the task under evaluation, and they are good examples for the primary task. So after these three, we have the subjective measures and the physiological parameters. Subjective measures are informed judgments made by human operators. The advantages of them are that are provided directly by the operator involved and can be collected so easy in a very inexpensive way. But a disadvantage could be that sometimes the operator is not fully aware of their own internal changes. So a good way to fix this is to mix or to combine the subjective measures with other ones. So in that way, we will be able to evaluate the information we have in a better way. So and later, we have the physiological parameters that are coming from bodily functions of the operator. The most widely used measure is the electrocardiogram, as we can imagine. Something relevant as well is that it's been demonstrated that air rate tends to increase in the most demanding phases of a flight. And air rate variability HRV. It's also used as a measure of mental workload, but not just HRV, but respiration, electroencephalography, ocular parameters are also sensitive to mental demands. So thinking about the solutions that could help when it comes to workload, we could say that automation, artificial intelligence, improvements, technology, fuel efficiency, all of that can be applied or are being applied nowadays to many industries, especially to the aviation industry. And that could be a good help for the human operator in order to perform better the task and to save time as well. Having said it, we have to consider as well education, so that it's training. That's where the human operator has to be trained properly and also receive the information that is needed to perform a task regarding the position. Organizational tasks, because that will help the human factor to organize better the number of tasks, the time, and we will help them to face unexpected tasks that are coming up to be fixed or resolved so quickly and, if possible, with no mistakes. After we have the task controls and procedures, so important to follow the tasks in order to see how they are performed, they are done, and following the procedures as well with the same idea of reducing the number of errors. Feedback and improvement is what is coming next. Feedback, because that's the way we have to see how the things are going and having the chance to make corrections or improvements in order to avoid the idea of going over and over, repeating the same mistake. And finally, the healthy organization culture, that is a summary of the previous items mentioned, and also including other aspects as well. So having said all of this, I hope you have enjoyed this session, and thank you for your attention.
Hello, good morning and good afternoon, everyone. I am Julia Elena Diaz from Mendoza, Argentina. Next, I will talk about how judgment and expertise influence aeronautical decision making. Let's start with some definition. There are both general dictionary definition of judgment and expertise and more specific definition provided by researchers and regulatory authorities. The dictionary definition may be thought of as one-dimensional because they apply to any uses of the terms. When the notion of aviation is added to one-dimensional definition, more specific terms we have. This may be thought of multidimensional or domain-specific definition. Specifically, when we talk about judgment, we focus in the multidimensional definition. Jensen defines judgment in terms of a skill, repertoire, knowledge, and motivation to choose a suitable courses of action. Good judgment requires the ability and motivation to discover and establish the relevance of all available information relating to problems, diagnose problems, specify alternative courses of action, assess the risk associated with each alternative, and choose and execute a suitable courses of action within the available time. Let's continue with the expertise. It is a special skill or knowledge, and expert is a person who has special skill or knowledge in some particular field. Experts will make better judgment than novice as long as the subject matter is within their domain or a specific area of expertise. Achieving expertise in aviation does not happen overnight, and pilots must understand it will only come with deliberate practice of both perceptual motors and cognitive skills. What's the meaning of perceptual motor skills? Is any ability or capacity involving the interaction of perception and voluntary movement. Perceptual motor skills involve sensing, thinking, and the acting. Practice is a central theme in improving perceptual motor skills. The other side, the cognitive skills, are those that involve mental processes such as comprehension, judgment, and memory. The training and the deliberate practices techniques for perceptual motor skills can also enhance cognitive skills. Inside the cognitive skills, we have mnemotechnic. Devices are often used as recall or memory. Mnemotechnics can be verbals, should not replace the use of checklists, but are often very helpful. Another, the schema, is a mental structure that represents some aspect of the world. Schema helps individuals to organize information and to expect future events based on previous experiences of sequence events. schema helps to make certain tasks more automatic and less cognitive load. It is important for an individual to understand that he or she indeed is using a schema and that it may not necessarily apply to every situation. For last cognitive skills, we have the cognitive flexibility, is the ability to quickly and accurately restructure one's current thoughts and action to respond adaptability to dynamic and ill-defined situation. For finish this part, I talked about the metacognitive skill. Metacognition is the ability to monitor one's current level of understanding and to decide when it is and is not adequate for the task at hand. In other words, it is thinking about thinking. Metacognitive training teaches decision makers to use general rather than specific strategy to optimize judgment and decision-making process in both familiar and unfamiliar situations. Now we continue and conclude with the decision-making, specifically aeronautical decision-making. In general, the decision-making is the cognitive process of selecting a course of action from among multiple alternatives. The decision-making process produces a choice of action or an opinion that determines the decision-maker's behavior and therefore has profound influence on task performance. The U.S. Federal Aviation Administration defines the aeronautical decision-making as follows. Aeronautical decision-making is a systematic approach to the mental process used by aircraft pilots to consistently determine the best course of action in response to a given set of circumstances. For that reason, a successful decision is not necessarily the optimum or most rational decision. It is the decision the human being understands and knows how to apply efficiently in the context of the situation. Aeronautical decision-making is strongly dependent on situational awareness and the alternative available. It is clear that situational awareness, decision-making, and action are thoroughly intertwined. Now talk about situational awareness and decision-making. Situational awareness is the perception of the elements in the environment within a volume of time and space, the compression of their meaning and the projection of their status into the near future. Situational awareness then must involve the ability to manage the correct mission and task requirement, must involve the ability to manage the correct levels of comprehension with regard to available mental resources and mission and task requirements. To finish, collective decision-making in commercial aviation, however, is a group or team environment. In aviation, the team represents a distributed cognitive system in which each member may affect the collective decision-making process. The leader takes a specific role in the process by assuming the responsibility for the collective decision on behalf of the team, regardless of the situation or event. The steps for making a successful collective decision are: access the same information either directly or by sharing among team members, building collective situational awareness and check for a common understanding, complete and mutually agree on goals, select and accept the course of action, execute the course of action using an approved task sharing scheme after having planned it by defining the procedure, rule and needs of each member.
Now I will talk about leadership. Leadership is underlying elements of discipline, skill, proficiency, knowledge, decision-making, and everybody should understand the basic concept of leadership because it is a personal quality that can profoundly influence flight safety. Leadership is a quality that is easy to recognize but difficult to define. When an individual exercises good leadership, others want to follow him or her because they recognize the leader is improving the chance for team success. Leadership is an inherent personal quality and a learned set of skills. In order to achieve good leadership, each pilot must understand both the elements of effective leadership and the consequences of poor leadership. Pilots and other members of the aviation community vary in their definition of leadership. Some believe that leadership involves influencing people by providing purpose, directions, and motivation while operating to accomplish the mission and improve the organization. Others believe persons with outstanding leadership possesses the human qualities required to make good judgments and decisions. Still others define leadership as a professional attitude or a personal aptitude similar to decision-making. Finally, leadership can be defined as an outcome. If others willingly follow you, you are a leader. All of these definitions have made us thus a more comprehensive view of leadership that is a composite of values, attributes, and principles. Leadership has historically been an important to the military, particularly in war times. The U.S. Army has based its leadership training on what an individual must be, values and attributes, must know, like skills, and do actions to be a good leader. It is important to note that the values, attributes, and skills and actions put forward by military are equally applicable in non-military settings. And what's this? Be a leader. Being a good leader involves developing and displaying good characters. Know the right things. An effective leader must possess certain skills and knowledge subdivided across 4 domains: interpersonal skills, conceptual skills, technical skills, and tactical skills. And do the right things. Good leader choose actions for the circumstances they are facing. Leadership actions can be subdivided into 3 categories: influencing, making decisions, communicating those decisions, and motivating people to do the right things, whatever it takes to get the job done safely and effectively. Operating correctly those actions needed to accomplish a team's immediate mission, and improving, consequently seeking ways to do things better, safer, faster, cheaper, rather than being satisfied with the status quo. After that, we have the business management leadership. In 2003, McKinsey and Company produced a study that summarized the evolution of leadership theory, and they talk about leadership styles that describe how effective leaders operate. In their 2003 book, Leadership Challenge, Kuss and Posner describe a leadership model based on data collection from thousands of successful and effective managers on their common practice and behaviors, and introduce the concept of network leadership. They talk about 5 competences were identified: model the way, inspire, a shared vision, challenge the process, enable others to act, and encourage the herd. What's this? Model the way. Leaders establish principles concerning the way people should be treated and the way goals should be pursued. Inspire, a shared vision. Leaders believe they can make a difference. They envision the future, creating an ideal and unique image of what the organization can become. Challenge the process. When leaders search for opportunities to change the status quo, they look for innovation ways to improve the organization or team's performance. In doing so, they may experiment and take risks. Enable others to act. Leaders foster collaboration and build team spirit. They actively others and understand that mutual respect is needed to sustain extraordinary team's effort. And encourage the herd is when accomplishing extraordinary things in organizations can take hard work. To keep hope and determination alive, leaders regularly recognize contributions made by their team's members. They view success as a team accomplishment and willingly share prize with all involved. A good leader of a successful team makes his or her team's member feel like heroes. Leadership qualities. We can say that there are many qualities other than pure intelligence or technical know-how that determines whether or not a leader is successful and effective. Daniel Goleman, in 1995, in his book Emotional Intelligence, talk about 5 different elements: self-awareness, self-regulation, self-motivation, social awareness, and social skills. How important are these elements? The building of leadership is like this figure. We can demonstrate how the elements of leadership are analogous to the component of a building: values and ethics, expectations and standards, training and education, skills, actions. Everything is making a good leader. For conclusion, I can say that leadership requires you to know yourself and seek improvement. Be technically proficient. Know your team members and look out for their welfare. Keep your team members informed. Set an example. Make sure the task is understood, supervise it, and accomplish it. Team. Make sound and timely decisions. Develop a sense of responsibility among your team members. Take responsibility for your actions and be fair and consistent. Thank you.
Good morning and good afternoon. My name is Leonardo Bandone and I will be in charge of this topic today. I will talk about error management. With the high reliability of modern aircraft systems, human performance has become a key focus for flight safety. Information or training alone cannot immunize a person or an organization against error. Improvement is only achieved through concrete improvements that make error less probable and their consequence less severe. So, the primary perspective of this at the organization level, and its goal to help personnel such as safety and training manager. So, and now defining human and error violations. In everyday parlance, the term error is used in a very broad sense. The classification used here is in the line with James Reason's definition. So, errors are intentional actions that fail to achieve their intended outcomes, but violations are intentional actions that break known rules, procedures, or norms. The fundamental difference between errors and violations is that violations are deliberate, whereas errors are not. So, errors can further be divided into the two following categories: slips and lapses, and mistakes. For example, unintentional, inside in slips and lapses, the plan is good, action is not according to the plan, slip incorrect action, and lapses, action forgotten. And mistakes, plan is not correct for reaching the goal, deficient, wrong, clumsy, and dangerous plans. Unintentional violation, routine, situational, exceptional violations, deliberate violation of rules, procedures, or norms. We have a lot of performance levels and different performance levels, but now in Rasmussen's model is briefly introduced below, applying learning routine. For example, skill based in performance, rules, knowledge, lapses at the skills based in levels, because we had a lot of levels of performance. In error management, people management position often find it difficult to deal with human errors, while various technical and non-technical skills can be improved by training, and thereby have a positive impact on certain types of mistake training does very little to prevent slips and lapses. So, the ultimate goal is to establish a working culture where violations are neither necessary nor an acceptable option. The limits must then be clearly communicated and imposed. Thank you very much, and remember, the most important is work together.